It's funny because our next caller, I had said, if you were just listening like a few minutes ago, I had said that I had a nice afternoon with Douglas Polk, owner, creator of Upswing Poker, at the Red Sox game. We sat on the Green Monster. And this particular gentleman, his name is Alex, played a very, very big hand against Mr. Doug Polk from at the Lodge. Hello, Alex. You are up next.
I didn't hear the last thing you said about you being in a. You said you were in a baseball. You guys went to a baseball game.
Yeah,
together?
we went to the Red Sox game last Thursday actually, and then he was in town, and then he went to play at Encore. He was trying to get. I don't know if he played some 10 1/4 or something like that. But we were doing some daytime drinking, and I was just beat. We went back to Encore. We had a meal, and I was just beat. But a really cool guy. But I know that this hand was played on the Lodge live stream, right? Your hand.
Yeah, this hand was on a live stream. I think
3 months ago,
like mid January. I think it was mid January.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a pretty action-packed game this day with Bill Perkins was in the game, Doug, Terrace, Nick Arabal, Charles from Live at the Bike. So the chips were definitely flying this day.
And tell me the size of the game. Like, what were the blinds?
Yeah, so we were playing 200, 400, 400 ante, and with an $800 straddle.
So 200, 400, 800 with a 400 big blind ante.
Right.
And how deep were you in this hand?
This hand, I'm going to be the effective stack with 350,000.
Jeez, Alex. My God.
We were deep.
What do you do for a living? No, I'm just kidding. Do you play?
A lot of PLO. A lot of PLO.
Oh, okay. So this is not like a stake that is necessary. Are you accustomed to these stakes?
Sort of play regularly, like 25, 50, 100 PLO. So
in Texas?
Yeah, in Houston mostly.
In Houston. Yeah, that makes sense. I know there's some huge PLO games in Houston, right?
Yeah, so not too far off. I mean, it is bigger. This game is definitely probably the biggest one I played. But, it's not super far off from what I usually play.
But it's probably not inaccurate that you probably don't play a lot of super high stakes straight hold'em, right?
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not. I think the only times I play, honestly, the only times I play No Limit these days is mostly at the Lodge live stream. And then occasionally I'll play like 10 to 15 tournaments throughout the year. But other than that, I'm playing a lot of PLO.
Okay. So 350,000 effective at 248 with a 400 ante. Okay. Tell us what happens here in this hand.
Yeah, it's important to note that we're playing the Nick game, which aka the stand-up game, and the tax. Yeah, the tax is $2,000 per player, so we're paying $14,000 every time you lose a Nick game.
And of course, stand-up game means like when you start to play the stand-up game, the last person that hasn't won a hand owes this bounty. On Hustler Casino Live, we've done it before. We don't actually stand up. I think they actually stand up at the Lodge, meaning like you're standing up to play, and until you win a hand, you're standing up.
Yeah, no, we don't. They don't do that anymore. You just have the
the marker.
You just have a marker.
Okay.
The nip, they call it the nip and the nick.
And was it like, were you at the end of the stand up round where you and Doug had not won a hand or something?
It's important to note that I had already gotten rid of my button, but Doug still had his.
Okay, so Doug's trying to win a pot because he's trying to not pay the bounty.
Right, and at this point, I think like there's like 4 left with the nip button. So he's fighting for. He's not trying to pay 14,000.
Right.
We're gonna start off with Terrace is gonna raise under the gun. So we have under the gun to raise to 2,000, which was standard.
Okay.
Open, and then you have Doug at +1 that 3 bets to 7,000.
So Polk from +1 goes to 7,000. Okay.
Correct. And then Charles to his left folds, and then it's me to act, and I wake up with pocket jacks here. I have the jack of spades and the jack of diamonds.
So you're probably like in the hijack, maybe something like that.
Something like that, hijack, low jack, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you probably want to do a lot.
I'm sorry, we're playing 8-handed.
8-handed. I mean, you probably want to do a lot of 4-betting here, right? Drive people out behind you, and then I always talk about in a multiple straddle game because if you call, it's going to incentivize people with an ante to come in. So I always want to take the more aggressive route in terms of putting in like a 4-bet or just 3-betting a hand when it's a 3 blind configuration, especially here with an ante.
Exactly, and then you add that to the fact that we're playing the Nick game, and Doug still has his button, so he's going to play more aggressive than usual. Also, he's going to be trying to isolate Terra's in position heads up. So yeah, I think we have a pretty clear cut 4-bet here, which I do. I make it 20,000.
So the under the gun guy's a little bit loosey goosey too.
He is, yeah. He's pretty loose. So his opening range is all over the place also.
So under the gun at 2,000, Polk 3-bets from +1 to 7,000. Hero picks up jacks and the hijack 4-bets at 20,000. Okay.
Yep. Folds around to Terras, who initially opened for 2,000. He folds.
Okay.
And then comes back to Doug. And now this is where the hand kind of starts to take off. Doug actually 5-bets to 60,000.
So +1, 5-bets to 60,000. You know what's fun about, I don't know how often this happens in PLO, like with this type of thing, but you in Hold'em, you're usually not playing deep enough to have to try to figure out a 5-bet sizing. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like you guys are so deep. And sometimes, like one of our content creators, Goon, it's like you don't really even have to have a 5-bet range a lot of times in live poker to just, if you want to continue with everything and you have like a trap, you know, with aces. It's interesting because, I mean, he chooses a 3x. That's the other thing too. Like he chooses a 3x 5-bet sizing, and all of a sudden the pot's like 90,000 and it's like 40,000 for you to call, something like that. So you're getting like 2.5 to 1 in position with Jack. And obviously you're up against a guy. I mean, I could get on board sometimes with like a normal guy who doesn't have a 5-bet, that only 5-bets ace of folding here with Jack. But when you add in that it's his casino, it's his live stream, and you're playing the nit game, I mean, you probably have to take a flop, right?
Yeah, especially me and Doug have plenty of history. You know, we've battled a lot, you know, in the previous streams. I've kind of gotten the best of them in the previous streams, and we're battling a lot there. So you add that dynamic too. It's like, okay, I think we have a pretty trivial call here. And I sort of think about, you know, the hands that he would be 5-betting me with in this setup, you know, considering like I'm 4-betting an under the gun +1 3-better. I mean, it's not like I'm full of shit here, right? It's not like cutoff open, Doug 3-bets blind, and I'm in the blind and I'm 4-betting. Like I actually have to have, like, my range is pretty strong here when I'm 4-betting an under the gun and under the gun +1.
Sure, but you do have that dynamic. I think it's funny because I gotta read this line. I gotta read a comment here from Yanni Karen, who says, under the gun versus under the gun 1 in a 3-bet should be Jack should be a pure fold. So he's so UTG open +1 3-bet Jack should be a pure fold. Is that at this stack depth though? My God. No, I'm just kidding with you, Yanni. But yeah, I mean, you're gonna get torched if you just open fold here right on the live stream. They're gonna invite you back, right?
Yeah, I'm never. So yeah, I do take a flop, and my thought process is like, honestly, being this deep, for value, like I'm starting to think about the hands that Doug is 5-betting me with here in this setup, and like I come to the conclusion that he's going to do a lot of calling, even with kings here versus 5-bet.
Right. I mean, because, you know, aces are the one hand that's always supposed to put in the extra. I mean, again, but usually in these spots, you don't have this deep of an SPR. I mean, the theory says, you know, I've talked about this before, that aces always puts in the extra bet, and you can balance that with ace king suited, because there's 6 combos of ace and there's 4 combos of ace king suited, and kings here would be called a lot.
Yeah, and I don't know if ace king suited 5-bets either, honestly.
Right.
Like,
I mean, it just, you know, I'm just throwing out the theory.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So 5-bet pot, you take a pot, you got Jack. Okay.
All right. So we take a flop, and the flop is going to be deuce of clubs, 3 of clubs, 9 of diamonds.
Oh boy, Alex. Well,
yeah.
I mean, if there's a guy that might empty the clip on I call this like a dynamic run out, because, you know, he might, I mean, I kind of know what happens in this hand, but even if I didn't, it would just be like, wow, this is going to be one where he can bet and then just put you really, really to the test. But I will go back to what you said, though, too, because I think it's important. Like, if you think he's doing just a lot of calling with queens or kings, and he like empties the clip here, he could become very, you know, a little bit polar to like ace or some, you know, whatever 5-bet bluff, whether that's like he comprises that with ace x wheel. I mean, that's another thing of note here too, right? Everybody loves to put the extra bet in with ace 5 suited. So you have to keep that in mind here on these wheel boards as well.
Yeah. So in my mind, he's pretty polo to like aces, and which, you know, there's 6 columns of aces. And then you have all the combos of suited wheel aces, which there's 16, right? If we put in ace deuce, ace three, ace four, ace five. So I'm talking about, we're talking about I'm beating there's way more combos of bluffs than there is a value. So yeah, it's going to get dicey.
Yeah.
If I don't pre-improve, but we have to kind of hold on here. Obviously, there's.
Well, at least for one bet. At least for one bet. All right. So what happens here?
So he goes pretty small here. He fires 28,000.
By the way, you now all of a sudden, like you have 290 behind. You only have like 2 SPRs. Even if it's insane. How much did he bet again?
He bet 28,000.
All right. So +1 Polk starts with a C bet of 28,000. And again, I think, with this stack depth, though, I mean, this is just pretty much a pure call. I mean, I know it's a small bet. I mean, it's one, it's what, 20 to 25% of the pot. Yeah, it's a little bit more than 1/5. So
yeah, he went pretty small.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't think you don't want to like get into a spot where you raise and commit yourself here too. So
no, of course not.
Jack is a little bit vulnerable, but there's a lot of things that I think that can obviously happen on turn.
Yeah, nothing to do here but to call. I never thought about a raising or anything like
that. Let me ask you, let me throw you a quick little, as an aside here. So what if you had ace king like suited or ace king off here? I would assume that you would probably play it the same way pre-flop. You're going to call the 5. Call the 5 bet. And then I guess you have to continue. I mean, obviously you're going to continue if you either had a backdoor flush draw, the suited variety, or any club in your hand. But even if you had ace of hearts, ace of spades, I think you have to continue because you'd have 2 overcards and, a backdoor wheel draw. So it's an interesting one. And I don't know, really, he's got to know, and he knows that what hand from, this is why this can kind of starts on the turn, I think, because I don't know if you ever have a fold here on the flop.
No, and I don't think he's expecting me to fold.
I mean, maybe if you had a king, queen of hearts, you know what I mean? Something like that.
Yeah, but then again, I don't know if I 4-bet that pre-flop, to an under the gun and under the gun +1 3-better. I might just fold that, that setup right there. We call and we get the churn from heaven, the Jack of Hearts.
Well, that's a good card. Shit.
Yeah.
The offsuit Jack. So now Hero has top set.
Right.
Yep.
So obviously loving life.
Yep.
And Doug now fires 78,000.
All right. So this is what's interesting about this when you take a look at this sizing. So +1, 78,000, because I think it's important to note, obviously it'll be up on the screen. If I was in game here in this spot, now I've never played at this stake, but we could maybe divide by 10. I've certainly played, 35,000 effective. I think the deepest I ever played was 100,000 effective. But, I would just be all right, if I call here, the pot's going to be we put in just under 160. The pot would be maybe 345. And then I'd look at my stack. I mean, I knew I had 260 and I'd have 200 behind. So if you make the call, you're right around 200 behind and there's 345 in the pot. You're never folding now, no matter what. And he is the type of guy that is, how many guys could actually triple barrel off in over $1 million pot or whatever it's going to be? Might be
Doug is one of them.
Yeah,
definitely.
He might be one of the guys. There's few of them. So for those reasons, there would be never a reason really to raise. Now, if you sort of cut the stakes a little bit and you're up against a guy that somehow has aces or something like that, if a guy is never bluffing and he's always going to call, which is a big assumption, right? Then you could just put money in now, just in case a scare card comes. But I wouldn't do that against him, though.
Exactly my thought process in the moment. If I really think that Doug only has aces here, I'm going to jump, and we do play against players that for a fact are not, even putting in the second barrel on the turn without having it. So yeah, Doug is definitely one that can still have a lot of bluffs and definitely capable of emptying the clip on the river. So no other reason but to call here. I know a lot of people are saying jam the turn. There's so much.
Yeah, but what if he has a bluff though that he would bluff off at the end though?
Exactly.
Because I mean, and also too, in this particular situation here, even if he had red aces here, and the river came off like a club. Like, I don't know. I mean, what would be a really bad card for him? Like the queen of clubs? Probably only on a Broadway club. And it's only like the king or the queen of clubs here. Maybe some 10 of clubs. Might he find like a check fold? Like if it's a low club, like the 7 or the 8, I mean, he only has just under a half pot size bet left. And if he's looking at it from a theory perspective where it's not just the money, at that point, you're still going to get the money, you know? So.
Exactly. And no reason to raise the turn. Keep his bluffs in.
Yeah.
And like you said, even if he's got aces here or somehow kings, we're still going to get the money. So no reason to do anything else but to call here.
Okay.
Yeah, and the river's pretty clean. The river's the 8 of hearts.
Well, so the only thing you lose to is queen 10.
Yeah, or 10-7.
I mean, 10-7. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, he never ever has any of those hands.
Oh, man, that would be... Can you... I mean, before that'd be unbelievable. He starts like... Well, I mean, he's probably going to c-bet any board. I was going to say structuring like queen 10 of diamonds. He's good.
Yeah, but even I don't think he ever takes those hands in 5-bets pre-flop. You know, like he just never has that.
So, all right. I mean, you must be loving life here, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And yeah, he takes about 30 seconds, and he puts me all in.
And I assume that you, well, just as a funny aside, with when you hold jack, I know you said you're a PLO player, right? In Hold'em, actually PLO is a form of Hold'em, but I always say this too, like the lowest nut hand. You can, Alex, you try. What is the lowest nut hand in Hold'em or PLO? What's the lowest possible nut hand?
And you're saying, I think you're saying in terms of like sets, or?
Well, I'm just saying, what is the weakest possible holding that can be the nuts on the river in these games? In a Hold'em variety game, which is also...
You're saying set of queens?
Yes, 3 queens, exactly.
Yeah. Jacks can't be the nuts.
Yeah, three queens is the weakest nut hand you can have. So you knew, unless the board paired, that Jack was not going to remain the nuts. I'm just saying, like, it's just something. So
absolutely. But we got to keep all Doug's bluffs in. So we're not gonna get them off. We're not gonna deprive him from just blasting off there.
So I assume you snap, right?
Yeah, definitely snap. We're not going to give him the net roll or anything like that, So
yeah.
I actually I tanked for like 5 seconds, but only because he put a stack of orange in, and I didn't know if that was enough to put me all in, and I wanted to make sure.
Well, that's good.
So if it wasn't enough to put me all in, I would just shove myself.
And that's interesting that you say that, right? Because obviously you said that you've got a fair amount of experience at the high stakes, because I think just for even people that are learning or that don't have as much, maybe if they've only playing for 4 or 5 years, I think some of us get really, really excited when we were going to snap anyways, and might actually miss subtle things like that about like, we're so ready to snap. He puts a bet in, right? And you're like, you think it's all in, right? But say it was only like 175. Like he puts a stack in, you got 200,000 effective left. It's only 175, and you're so excited. You say call, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you somehow like leave 25K at the table. Now, obviously, it doesn't matter if he's going to have a bluff, but I've seen people do that.
Yeah. No, I always make sure that they're putting enough there to cover what I have.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the only reason I took 5 seconds, to put it in.
And so what did he have?
He had the old ace-4 of spades.
Well, he might be one of the few guys in the world that's capable of pulling that, right?
Yeah. So, you kind of have to know your opponent there. Like I said, me and Doug have also, I mean, I knew he was capable, even if we didn't battle before, but,
right.
You have the fact that, we've battled in the past, and we kind of just left rewards on this.
And this is the largest pot in the history of the lodge, right? Is that right?
Yeah, I think it was 700 and just shy of 708,000. So like 707,000 and change.
Oh, I mean, nice hand. Let me ask you just as an aside here. So did you have plans for what you were going to do on the turn? It's interesting because I think like a queen gets a little bit tricky here. Like if you were going to say that you were going to go call against any like non-club over cards here on the turn, like what would you have done if like the queen of hearts came on the turn and you went 78,000? Are you going to play, because I like to call this like Fifth Street Chicken in a $750,000 pot. Like, did you have a plan to sometimes go call and then fold river? Or were you just going to call the whole way down unless you saw like 2 overcards?
I honestly, just my thought process in the whole hand is like, okay, he has aces for value. And then
Yeah.
I think, like, like I said before, I think he just flats a lot with kings pre-flop. He doesn't put in
Hmm.
the fifth bet. So I think there's way more combos of bluffs than there is of value. So in my mind, I was gonna hold on. I'm not saying, so if I got a clean run out, like even a queen, I think queen on the turn would have been an interesting card because I have a lot of queens here,
Right.
right?
Yeah, he's got to be scared of
So
that. Right. Yeah.
yeah, so at that point, it's like, okay, if he has aces,
Right.
he's pretty much only gonna get action for the most part from kings, right? That's pretty narrow range. So like the queen, it would be a bad card for him
Hmm.
to barrel on the turn, I think. And I don't know if he goes, if he's always gonna blast off. I think it just has to do with board texture and what he thinks I have, because it looks like I have exactly what I have, right? Like jack.
Yeah, I mean, and the other cards that like get sort of sticky, and we don't think about that because a lot of people might look at it and they're like, oh, what if the board like the top pair of pairs, and that would shut things down? That would absolutely not shut things down. Like,
No, that's irrelevant.
yeah, if a 9 came, it's sort of he's going to bet through aces, or an a deuce or a 3 came. So as long as you don't get some of those wheel cards where you always get like ace 5, ace 4 in the back of your mind, any like offsuit 6 through 8, and then board pairs. I think the worst case scenario for you, and one of the spots that like one of the ones that gets really kind of fucked up is like if it comes like board pair and then the river's like a king. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
Right.
like, oh God, could he have ace king here? And if he got here like this with ace king, we know that he's good enough to make to value bet. But then it all comes back down to how you think he constructs a 5-bet range right at these stakes.
Yeah,
So.
I think it's just like pretty interesting because it's a very tight, it's just like under the gun, it's just the under the gun +1 raise and that I4, but he 5 bets. It's just his range here is just like just aces. I think for value, like I said, I don't. I was like that's the main question that I get asked a lot. It's like, oh, like what would you have done if it wasn't a jack? I'm like, well, if
Right.
I think there's way more combos of bluffs, I'm not folding my hand. I'm gonna hang on and kind of just evaluate on the turn and river. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I was gonna fold if it came a clean run out. Now
Well, I mean, just to wrap this up, it is interesting because if you do get a clean run out, like even if you don't have any overcards that come, right? I mean, but you make a good point. Like, if you get like low board pairs or anything that's irrelevant, especially for making your hand a set, and in this case, Jack is not, at some point, do you fold off the overpair? But I think what you're saying is that, like, if I really only think he's 5-betting with aces, then he might just get my money if he's going to be like not even bluff heavy, but just have some bluffs, right?
exactly. Yeah, that was my thought
Yeah,
process in the hand, and obviously, the jack made a very
sure.
very much simpler, very easy call. So
All right.
that was a hand.
All right. Awesome. Thanks very much for the call, Alex. Maybe I'll look you up if I ever come back to Texas. Okay.
I'll be there, Bart. Thank you. Have a good day.
All right.